All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us for a very special episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And Jacob, I don't need to say, here you are on the screen.
Here we are.
Here you are, right next to me, live from Jerusalem. So welcome everyone that's watching and will be watching. Very special episode. We've been planning this for a while, and thank you so much for Jay, Davey, Jordan for being here with us, and you guys have planned this out, and you made it work. So we appreciate you guys and appreciate those who are watching us. So blessed to have you from Jerusalem, albeit 9 hours ahead of where I'm used to, Jacob. And,
yes.
You're a little bit ahead.
Yes.
A couple hours.
2 hours, yes.
Yeah. So it's such a blessing to be with Jacob, such a blessing to be with you guys today. And from Jerusalem, couldn't have it any other way. Obviously, I miss my family and everything, but if I had to pick another place to be, it would be Jerusalem with Jacob, catching up. So, Jacob, before we get started, this is because a lot of people don't know, and maybe some of them knew, of course, they know that. But if they're new, they don't remember or they don't think about the fact that you lived here.
Yes.
You lived here for quite some time.
Yes.
And coming back here for, obviously you've been coming back for a while, but you know, because of the lockdowns, you couldn't make it here for a couple of years. Tell us a little bit about how you got here to Jerusalem, to Israel, where you lived, and some of the changes you've seen over the past 20-some years.
Well, you ask about a painful saga. We still have a family home here, and our children, of course, born here. My son was in the Israeli army. I just did a little bit of training, but my son was actually in the army for the full 3 years in a combat brigade and then in the legal corps because he's a lawyer. So my children are born here. My wife came here as a refusnik, as a Jew who was able to get away from the communists. The communists refused her and her family right to leave Romania, but eventually they were able to get out by some negotiation, and they came to Israel. My wife was 11. Now, how did I come here? Well, one of the good things about being a believer in the United States is there's more eligible Christian women than there are eligible Christian men. And even an ugly guy like me was able to get a very attractive girlfriend in New York. She had been a professional dancer and she got saved, and she was very good looking. But she had marital ambitions. Now, I didn't have any marital ambitions. To me, at that time in my life, the only good thing about holy matrimony was that sex wouldn't have been a sin, but that was not a good enough reason to jump off the Empire State Building without a parachute. And I didn't know why you would even bother dating girls, because I knew what you did when you weren't a Christian, but when you became a believer, I didn't know why you even bothered. I mean, unless you wanted to get married, which, I mean, again, that was not on my agenda. And I knew I was in trouble when she called me up one day and she said, "Hello, honey." Well, I immediately immigrated to Israel, and I eventually married an Israeli girl. She doesn't call me honey. I'll tell you what she calls me later, but that's the story in a nutshell.
So you got here, and where'd you live? Where'd you live in Israel?
Originally, I went to Hebrew University for a while, as did my wife. My wife studied chemistry, actually, and then later on mathematics, but initially she studied chemistry, and then she studied Jewish history and biblical Hebrew. So she has a degree in biblical Hebrew as well as a mathematical science background. We both went from scientific fields to theological fields after getting saved, and we met here, and a lot went on during that time. Won't bore you with it now, but it was about 4 years after I first met her. I led her to the Lord in Jerusalem. I was taking an Arab guy with gangrene to the hospital, who I picked up out of the streets, literally the old city, and I spoke very little Hebrew at the time, just a little bit that I knew from New York, and no Arabic. And Pavia spoke English, and she could speak reasonably good Arabic, and she spoke Hebrew, of course.
Nice.
And she helped me translate. And we got this guy to the hospital, and I began witnessing to her. And there was an attraction, but there was a big problem. Her parents, being Holocaust survivors, there was an issue, like, we didn't want them to think that she became a believer in order to marry me. We wanted them to know she became a believer because she believed Jesus, Yeshua was the Messiah, and so forth, and believed the gospel. So a lot went on in our lives, and the Lord dealt with things. But 4 years later, we eventually got married. At that point,
Nice.
we lived in Haifa for some years. I only left Israel to go to seminary in Great Britain. I'd only been to secular college, university. I'd never been to a university, seminary or Bible college. So I left Israel for the purpose of getting a theological education. And then one thing led to another. But we've always kept a home in Israel. Of course, we speak Hebrew, and our children are born here, and there's a family home here. So I've always had a foot here, as does my wife and so forth. So here we are.
So that's what, a culmination of about 20, 30 years?
Oh, more than that. It goes back to the late 70s.
Late 70s, okay. So you lived in the northern part of Israel. Your children were born there. Then you went to London College, Theological School.
Yes.
Okay. And you never came back to live in Israel after that. You stayed in...
For short periods of time.
Okay. And always in the north, but you spent a lot of time here in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I lived in Jerusalem when I was younger.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's neat background. I mean, I think a lot of people just miss that fact that, your children are born here. You spend a lot of time here. Basically, this is your third home or second home away from home.
Yes, that's right.
Originally New York. And Jacob, so what's changed? I mean, talk to me a little bit about the Messianic fellowships and just the ambiance.
When I first you came today with me to a Messianic fellowship that Moriel is supportive of, the help support here.
Yes.
There were more people in that meeting this morning than there were believers in the entire country when I first came here.
Wow.
There were more believers this morning at that one meeting we were at.
Yeah.
Than there were believers in the entire country.
Oh, it was a packed place.
When I first came, there were about 200 known believing Jews.
Wow.
In Israel. And everybody knew everybody. It was like an extended family. There was only a handful of fellowships, and none of them too big.
Yeah.
Only maybe a half dozen or so, something like that. There was some Arab believers, but that was it. Everybody knew everybody. There was nothing. And now today, nobody knows how many. I'm not saying it's huge, but there's certainly thousands.
Yeah.
There are thousands of believing Jews already. And then when the Russians came, there were thousands more.
Wow.
And the Russians were saved in the underground church under the Soviets.
And then they came.
They were persecuted, so they came here. So it is very, very different. There are a lot more believers here now. More than 10 times, more than 20 times more.
Wow.
More than 50 times more. I don't even know how many fellowships there are in the country. Nobody does, because some of the Russians still meet in Russian instead of Hebrew, and they have their own meetings.
Really
nobody at house churches, nobody even knows. But it's a lot.
It was a packed house today. It was a packed house today for sure.
Yep, and you'll see similar things, other fellowships. I remember Carmiel, there was 6 believers. Now you go up to Carmiel, there's 200 in that place. I mean, in my lifetime, so far, 62.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit. And we don't really know the number of it. Certainly Romans 11, I'm thinking of Romans 11.
The natural branches are being grafted in again.
That's right. But Jacob, now, explain to me a little bit more what you see, the role of the church here in Israel, the believers, obviously the conditions, the atmosphere, the society, how it's changed since you've been gone. And obviously we're going to talk politically because they had a huge election, but that's part of that. So what's the role of the church now here, as there are more believers now, and so now they're shepherding plus being fishers of men, but it's all an increasing secular society, an increasing, religious society, because the religious right it's very much entrenched in the government now. So how do you see it?
Very much like in the first century, you had Orthodox believers, Judeo-Christian believers of the first century. You had that. But like in the first century, you've got the same kinds of problems, the first and second century. You have Ebionites here. You have Jews who believe, theological Ebionites. Yeah. They believe Jesus is the Messiah, but they deny his deity. You have secret believers in the Orthodox community. But if you don't confess me before men, how am I going to confess you before my Father?
That's right.
They may believe he's the Messiah, but that does not mean that they're born again necessarily. You don't really know. But there are secret believers even among the Orthodox now. Well, there always have been a few, but there are more now. Then you have multiple factions. You've always had Jewish believers, Arab believers, and some places like Haifa where Jews and Arabs would meet together. But now it's the Russians, some of them have integrated into the mainstream Israeli body of Christ, and others Russians have remained Russian.
Separatists.
Culturally Russian and Russian fellowship. So the main language is Russian.
Yeah.
You've got that, but you've also got Neo-Galatians. You have and a lot of these people came from the United States. They were not Israeli, trying to go under the law and live under two covenants. You've got that. You also have a lot of the same kinds of deceptions that you have globally. For instance, the New Apostolic Reformation. In Israel, it's called the Tikkun movement. But it's here. They have the same essential beliefs. People who promote Gnosticism and mysticism and all sorts. You've got people who've been tied in with the word faith, American money preachers. Another factor here is you've got the indigenous church, but you also have the expatriate church. There are a lot of people who come here from other countries because they want to live in the land of the Bible and see prophecy being fulfilled.
Right.
And a lot of these people are lunatics, a lot of them. They don't witness, they don't evangelize, they believe God's going to save the Jews. They just have to come here and love the Jews.
Yeah.
For instance, the New Testament says the ambassadors of Christ are the ones who preach him. You have organizations claiming to be Christian embassies who have a non-evangelistic policy.
Wow.
You even have organizations that promote Aliyah and immigration to Israel, but sign agreements not to withhold the gospel. And they say that's their ministry.
Yeah.
So you've got the Jewish, the Arab, the Russian, the expatriate. It's multifaceted. Then you've got the heretics. You've got the Neo-Galatians, and you've got Ebionites, Neo-Ebionites. That's essentially what they are theologically. But there is still a mainstream core of believers that are integrated. That there are expatriates who fit. You'll see Koreans and stuff who speak Hebrew who come to it.
I met some today.
Or Brazilians and things like that. And you'll see that, and they've integrated into the Israeli body of Christ, and a lot of Russians have as well. And you'll see some Arab believers with them. And that's another problem. You've got Arab believers who take a political left-wing anti-Zionist line, but they claim to be born again.
Oh, man.
But they hypocritically keep their mouths shut about the persecution of Christians by radical Islam.
No.
They won't tell you, they never talk about what Hamas and Hezbollah and things do to Arab Christians. They want to be on good terms with them, so they'll be left alone, so they'll take an anti-Israel. There's this check post movement, it's absolutely terrible and hypocritical. So it's multifaceted. Our ministry, Moriel, we have our own evangelistic ministry here, but we have projects that are designed to support the indigenous body of Yeshua. We work only with local congregations, and there are local congregations that we work with and support, as well as certain other ministries. We help a Christian school now. We help a ministry for believers in the Israeli army.
Yes.
We have a work that we sponsor among Bedouin Arabs. It's the only ministry among Bedouins, the desert, the camels. We're the only one, and we're probably one of their leading sponsors. Well, we are one of their leading sponsors. So we have work among Arabs, particularly Bedouins. Yeah. We have work among soldiers. We have work among children, and we they're not all Moriel work. We just support the local. But then we have our own work as well. And much of that, not all of that, but much of that, it's evangelistic, and much of that is online. Yeah. But we have the same battles with the YouTube and so forth, and getting problems.
Wherever you go, it seems to be the same. Same issues. So we'll get to the election part. That's a huge ripple effect. It's going to affect the believers, even though they may not think about it because of the ultra Orthodox right that is hooked up with the current government now.
Just ask people to please pray for our Moriel team here. We have a good branch here. We have some great people, and I was with them yesterday. They were doing some evangelistic work among Arabs, and to just see saved Jews witnessing to Arabs. You know, you see all this what's going on, but you see what God does.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's great motivation, by the way.
Yes.
Jacob, you spoke about some of the false things and heresies that are getting in, because there's even some so-called believers that would say that they need to support the third temple, that they need to support this temple movement that's coming in, which is an antichrist temple that did not. But these are believers. These are supposedly believers. So you got guys like John Hagee who supports rabbis who are anti-missionary movements.
Yep.
So. It's a very complex picture.
Yep. There are believers who do a lot of good for Israel.
Yeah.
But there are believers who do more harm than good.
Very good. Very good. Well, we'll get to Israel in a moment as we get toward the end of the episode. Well, let's catch up, Jacob. First on the list, and we want to make sure that everybody understands, this is a tsunami, and we're not talking about the election in the U.S. coming up, but this is a tsunami that it's been underreported for obvious reasons. The DHS. It's now clear and evident that they've been working with tech companies to throttle, remove, purge any other opinion except the one that's accepted, the current Marxist leftist movement in the U.S. Nothing else is accepted. So literally these companies have been meeting with them, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Discord, Wikipedia, Microsoft, LinkedIn, Verizon, meeting with FBI, DHS to coordinate the removal and censoring as like an operation, especially about elections. Zuckerberg came out on a podcast recently that said he's been meeting with the FBI, especially about the 2020 election. There were throttling, there were shadow banning, you name it, they did it. Now it's not even a question. We couldn't even assume anymore. It's on record. We've been talking about this. We've been sounding the alarm, but now it's across the world for people to see. Jacob, what's your take on it, first of all, and then what do you, not the solution, we know what the solution is, but it's for people to wake up and see that in reality, there's really a tech censoring from all angles. It's not just YouTube. I know YouTube gets a lot of the bad rap, but it's other ones too.
Look, it's an attack on democracy and free speech. You see it in New Zealand, you see it in Canada, you see it in Australia. But their real targets are Great Britain and the United States.
That's right.
That is the ultimate targets. The Australia, New Zealand, Canada, those are peripheral targets. Once they get established in those countries, then they go after free speech and things like this in the United States and the UK.
Yeah.
When you have actual people, Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioting and burning week after week, and they're allowed to do it with total impunity.
Yeah.
And you're being lied to and being told that it is entrenched racist white extremists who are the real threat to national security when they can't point to hardly any instances of it except for the occasional individual.
Right. Lone wolf.
They just tell, it's just that they build it on a lie. They're very much like Hitler, very much like Goebbels, very much like the Stalinists. They've got the same spirit as the Stalinists and as the Nazis, both of whom, of course, were socialists. That is what you see happening. Now, it is not just the DHS. It is the Justice Department, the intelligence community, call it deep state, and it is increasingly the Treasury Department, the IRS being used as a political police force.
Yeah, 87,000.
87,000 accountants with guns, with 9mm. You know, and this is supposedly to fight inflation.
Or global warming.
Yeah, or tax evasion by billionaires.
Yeah.
You need 87,000 IRS agents with guns to monitor 1,000 billionaires. I mean, it's absurd. It's a lie. But the fact that they're able to do it and get away with it, and there's people who still vote for them, and who can still be that stupid. This is exactly what you saw with Bolshevism, and it's exactly what you saw in Nazi Germany. People would have said Hitler was crazy at a better time. But a nation began following a madman. Well, that's what's happening now. They follow madmen.
And I would say with if Hitler had this technology,
Yeah, oh
he would've
God,
gone- yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, because now we see technocracy just. All of our lives are very much connected to technology in
Yep.
every way possible. Even those who are trying to get away from it, they can't.
Yep.
And those are the very things, the very tools that they use
Yep.
to censor your life and to keep you from First Amendment rights in the U.S.
Yes.
And so we see it increasingly. Now, I don't know what kind of, obviously, and I was asking Natalie earlier today about what does the UK call their charter? I know the Canada's Charter of Rights. What do they call it in England? Certain rights.
It was the European Charter of Human Rights, but the UK is no longer in the EU.
Right.
That's the issue now.
Okay, so
now you're appealing to British common law.
okay, so now it's okay. I know the former foreign minister wanted to get away from that, right?
Yes.
Because of the Brexit issue and all that stuff. We'll get to England in a moment. But do you think that's going back? It's going back to Brexit with Sunak and Hun?
Sunak is definitely a globalist. He's definitely a globalist. And there is an element that will, although he was pro-Brexit for political reasons, there are people who want to make Britain EU in all but name. and that there is that
Faction.
faction within the Conservative Party. There is that faction. They're globalists.
Yeah.
Sunak, look, it doesn't really matter Brussels. It matters now Davos. It matters the World Economic Forum.
Increasingly much more.
Increasingly,
right? Yeah.
increasingly. The people don't understand. It doesn't matter if it's Zelensky. It doesn't matter in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's that ridiculous Seder woman in
Yeah.
New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll talk about her today.
They are all from Schwab.
Yes. So the real issue is now, okay, so civil rights, civil liberties, especially in the U.S., the Bill of Rights and all that stuff, England common law, that's gone. It's for sure gone.
The Second Amendment was under attack.
Yeah.
Now free speech is under
Yeah.
attack. It's a war against the Constitution.
Yeah.
You've got the DHS and that terrible man who ought to be removed.
Yeah, Mayorkas.
Mayorkas.
Yeah.
You look at it, instead of protecting the border, instead of doing what he's supposed to do by the congressional charter,
Yeah.
by the legislation that established Homeland Security,
Right.
instead of doing what he's supposed to, he's not doing that. He's making war on free speech.
Yeah. Can you believe that? That's
Yes.
absolutely nuts. I mean, what? I mean, you're being invaded. It's literally an invasion.
You can only read Pravda and Izvestia, better known as the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Yeah, but add to that now all these, basically all these collaborators from Twitter to FB, to
Yep.
Facebook to you name it down the line. Now Joe Biden is all of a sudden really interested in Twitter. He's
Yes.
very interested in Twitter because now he says we need to realize that it is they're spewing lies all over the world. He say now they were really happy with Twitter.
As
not
soon,
so long
as soon
ago.
as it's out of the control of the left,
Yeah.
as soon as it's independent, now it's a threat.
It's a threat, yeah. So they're reviewing the contract. They're reviewing the purchases of Musk, and I don't know what they could do if they can actually be able to block it. But nonetheless, he's now in charge of Twitter. But now, of course, Twitter is going to be a big problem for them, seemingly, unless they do something.
Yes.
But the tech stocks, all the stocks that we've been talking about, those that have stock, seemingly Twitter, Microsoft for sure, and Facebook and Google and the Alphabet company. The tech stocks have gone down.
They are going down quickly.
Yeah.
But so is the viewership of mainstream media.
Yeah.
They're fighting for their lives. So when they see what's happening with Twitter,
Yeah.
it scares them.
Yeah.
It absolutely does scare them. When they see any kind of conservative trend, particularly in the Supreme Court, thanks to Mr. Trump's appointees, where you had the revocation of Roe v. Wade, which will not stop abortion,
Right.
but it will simply leave it up to the states, and it will leave it up to the voters instead of unelected judges.
Right.
Or now, fortunately, affirmative action is
on the docket
It's
now.
on. Thank heavens. It just institutionalized racism. The left is beginning to go crazy, and they're beginning to have a meltdown over the present election.
Wow.
But the election is another
Yeah,
thing.
we're going to talk about that in a minute. But speaking of the Supreme Court justices, we were talking earlier today at lunch about just the obvious mental incapacity of some of these Supreme Court judges who they were appointed for. You tell me better. They were appointed for the reason whether they were XX chromosome, not XY chromosome, right? And a certain pigmentation in their skin. But they really have written
Yes.
nothing contributing. There's really no amazing cases that they presided over or wrote great comments on previous cases. They're simply there
Yes.
to fulfill the leftist ideology.
Remember, those who can't do teach. There are exceptions, such as Alan Dershowitz.
Right.
But if you're no good in court, become a law professor. If you're no good on Wall Street, become an economics professor. If you're no good in a pulpit, become a theology professor. Now, there are exceptions.
Right.
But they are exceptions.
Right. It is
okay,
exceptions.
so you've got Kagan, a left-wing Harvard academic
Yeah.
with no real background in the practice of law.
Yeah.
She's just an ideologue, feminist. That's why she's there. Okay, then you have the newly appointed woman who issued a decision favorable to pedophiles.
That's right.
Was it Brown?
Ketanji Brown.
Ketanji Brown.
Yeah.
Okay. Biden said she was appointed purely on the basis of race and gender. So right away, you eliminate 50% of the potential appointees because of gender. And then you eliminate most women. We want a black woman. 3% of the population, the other 97% of the population does not qualify for consideration as a Supreme Court justice because we're going to appoint somebody on the basis, not of qualification and experience, but of race and gender. And then they yell about discrimination. then they claim white privilege. Then they claim, a war on women. then they claim,
If they could tell what a woman is.
if they can tell what a woman.
Yeah,
So what you basically have with Brown is a judicial bimbo, a racist bimbo. Now, so to my ear, she would have to undergo a significant amount of upgrade and improvement to qualify as a bimbo. She's not even there. She didn't know the difference between de facto and de jure. She didn't know the difference between what is established in law and what is established in fact. She didn't know basic legal terminology.
Wow.
Alito had to tell her, and she wrote it. And she's on the Supreme Court. Something that a first-year law student would know. But she was appointed because she was a Hispanic woman.
Yeah.
What you can't... I'm sure you can find the Hispanic woman who's at least legally literate.
Plenty. If you wanted to go the Hispanic card, there are plenty good judges that could have done it. Yeah. But she's a leftist. She will fulfill the radical left ideologies, and that's why they're there. I mean, that's the reality.
I suppose they want stupid judges who will just vote the way they're politically told to by the establishment.
That's it. Well, just like
who don't know how to think legally.
Yeah, but just like the constituents. The constituents are the same thing. I mean, the average voter doesn't really know.
Yes.
And they just basically parrot the same talking points.
That's right.
Yeah, and the reality is they believe Ketanji Brown, they believe Sotomayor, they believe these judges.
Yes.
Yeah, but it feeds into already uneducated.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not like, ideologically, I did not agree with Ruth Ginsburg. But she wasn't stupid.
Yeah, yeah. She
now you replace her, deliberately replace her.
Yeah.
With something that is racially and that is both sexist and racially motivated, discriminatory, and you intentionally look for a moron.
Moron in this sense, not the biologically.
No. I don't mean learning impaired.
Yeah.
You find somebody who is juridically unqualified.
Yes.
You find the charlatan. You find the charlatan. Somebody who went to law school on affirmative action because they couldn't get in if they weren't.
Yeah. Well, they have a vice president that's like this. So
yes.
There you go. Well, I read some of the Ketanji Brown decisions on. We talk about the leaning toward pedophilia. Literally rapists, pornographers, child pornography traffickers.
And look at the way they hate Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
A black American. One of the best jurists this country has ever had in modern times, certainly.
A genius,
certainly. And they hate the man.
Yeah.
They hate the man because he's black.
Yeah.
The blacks and the left hate him because he's a black person who they can't control, who thinks legally instead of according to a globalist agenda.
And basically hands it to them because he knows the law better than any one of them. So Well, they do hate any colored person, any Hispanic, any black person that doesn't think like the left. They hate them. I mean,
Yes,
look
that's
at Kanye West, and look at Candace Owens and some of these folks that are, I guess, more leaning toward conservatism. They really hate them. But let's talk about another situation. We talk about bad judges. How about bad politicians? In this
find
case,
me a good one.
Yeah. In this case, you probably won't find any on the left, but let's talk about the Pelosi family. They've been on the news a little bit, all right? So I'm going to open up the conversation and then let you have at it, just to set up the thing. Paul Pelosi opened a door, seemingly, according to the police, and he was attacked by the Pape. I think that he pronounced his last name. And the Pape has a history of being a radical leftist, nudist, lots of things, lives on a bus and just crazy stuff that he's done, right? Attacks on this is according to the police report that has been almost coming out, but hasn't been really come out completely, has been attacked and with hammers. They were both found in their underwear. And these are the facts, right? So broken window, hammers, underwear, 2 men. Nancy's not home. So Nancy's away in business. So are we looking at when the cat is away, the mice will play? And what exactly are we looking at here? Because the left has gone crazy with the story. I'll read you some of them after you comment, because they're blocking and they're protecting Paul Pelosi from any kind of criticism. Go ahead, Jacob.
He was just in trouble a month ago for DUI, wasn't he?
Yeah.
All right. So they're picking on him.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, anyone else in San Francisco, the police footage would have been made publicly available instantly.
Yeah.
If it had not been a liberal Democrat, it was a Republican, it would have been headline news every day.
Yeah.
Instantly. Instantly. Why won't they release the footage? Why have they not let this guy out on bail the way they let other assailants out on bail or even no bail?
Yeah.
But there's one set of rules for them
Yeah.
and one set of rules for the rest of us because they're elitists. Now, just look at this. You've got a radical naturist. In other words, a guy who runs around naked.
Seriously, that's what he does.
He's homeless.
Yeah. Lives in a bus.
He lives in a bus, he's homeless, and he's an illegal alien. So you got an illegal alien who runs around naked and who has a Black Lives Matter flag hanging on his trailer. Next to, okay, and they find him with a hammer with Pelosi's husband attacking him, so they say. And all of a sudden, this is the fault of Republicans. It is because it is an expression of the 2020 violence.
Yeah.
Now,
This Trump's
it is absolute madness. The fact that they would even try it, but they must know there's enough stupid people to believe them.
it. Yeah, especially in San Francisco. I mean,
How
no
can
offense.
you? He's an illegal alien.
Yeah.
He's a radical
With the rap sheet.
with the rap sheet.
Yeah. I mean, you'd think they'd love him. They'd probably make him congressman or something like that with that kind of, that kind of mark. But, well, here's more that's come out, Jacob, in the last 48 hours. So, according to the police report that's being leaked out, before the police got there, the Pape and the Pelosi spent 30 minutes together.
Yep.
30 minutes together, alone. According to the police, he was led in by Pelosi. So a lot of things don't make sense.
Yep.
This was written by an NBC journalist, Al McGuire. Very accurate. In fact, it was so accurate, NBC had to take it down.
Yep.
They deleted the story because they're censoring themselves over what he wrote. He's not a QAnon conservative. He's not a Trump supporter. I mean, all things point to where there's smoke, there's fire. I think this is Brokeback Mountain stuff.
Sure,
honestly,
well, it looks like
honestly,
it.
yeah. Except for hammers. So now, check this. The left. The left says you can't call Paul Pelosi a homosexual. You can't call him that. It says you have no right to call him a homosexual. But they say there's nothing wrong with homosexuality. It's just that it's not for him. So anyone else would have been very happy to be, the left would have applauded being a homosexual, but now it's not okay.
Can you imagine if it was a Republican or a conservative or?
It would have been everywhere.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
At least Prince Andrew was held somewhat publicly culpable in England for his association
With Epstein.
With Epstein.
That's right.
Why did Bill Clinton get away with it?
Yeah, exactly.
the media censors it.
Yeah. Now,
But then they want to censor you.
so you, for saying the same thing. Now, Rex Chapman from CNN Plus says he ran a story. Check this out, Jacob. It says Paul Pelosi cannot be gay because Nancy is so hot. She is so sexy. He says he can't be gay because she's hot and sexy.
The only time she's going to be hot when she's burning in hell as a witch.
Wow. That's going to be the hot stuff.
Then she'll be a hot babe.
Yeah. Now the sexy stuff, I don't know, she's 80. I think she's older than I think my grandma was probably a little bit older than her, but he says he can't be gay. It's not a bad thing, he says, but gay he's not because she's so hot. I mean, this is ridiculous. It made me laugh more than anything else, but check this out. Hillary comes on and she says, if you attack them, you're a racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
This is Hillary. MSNBC says this is suggested that Paul Pelosi was attacked mysteriously. It's basically a hippie who attacked him, and it's part of the racism that enabled by conservatives. Again, Joy Reid.
You have a radical, a guy who runs around naked as a political cause, who's homeless technically, who's an illegal alien, and who has a Black Lives Matter flag, and somehow this is part of a conservative conspiracy. They've lost their mind. But not only have they lost that's beyond desperation.
Yeah.
And do they really think people are that stupid? Well, some people are.
Yeah.
But
maybe Paul Pelosi is gay because he's married to Nancy. I mean, you could take it the other way.
Yeah, that's right.
You could take it the other way. But Dick Durbin comes out. Durbin comes on and he says, well, how dare you use your free speech to attack Paul Pelosi? It says, this is why we need to restrain misinformation under the guise of free speech. So at the end of the day, it's free speech. At the end of the day, is more taking away their rights. At the end of the day, it's rules for us and not for you, that kind of stuff. So,
yes.
Oh man. So I think more's going to come out. We haven't seen the last of it, but yeah, you're right. He's been on the news. Paul Pelosi's been on the news. Not only the intoxication, DUI, but also their stock trading. They know more.
Yes, Pelosi. Look, why has Pelosi not been at least investigated
for inside trading?
For insider trading?
Yeah, absolutely.
By the Securities and Exchange Commission.
I mean, she's got like a 90% success rate.
Yes.
The best stock traders in the world have like at least 50. I mean, that's a good one.
Yes.
She's got 90. People made millions of dollars just by following
her. Yes.
I don't get it. But then again, maybe because I'm not a Democrat or something like that, I don't get it. But nonetheless, more is going to come out. Now, from one crazy person to another, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand has been running amok. Now she's
emphasize the muck.
Yeah. She's got the farmers all up in arms. Listen to this. Because of her new policy on green policy, the green policy and agenda, tax on emissions of farm animals regarding their burping and their flatulation, meaning their farts, are going to be taxed because it's called the burp and fart tax, literally, the burp and fart tax. It's going to be a high levy against agriculture, against sheep, against cows, I guess New Zealand has a lot of sheep, and farmers are just going to lose it. They're already losing it, but they're going to lose it all if this goes through. And now, following the thinking of the Dutch farmers, the New Zealand farmers are now protesting, and it's a big thing. They're blocking roads, tractors, you name it. But again, this has been a long time coming, Jacob. You've been talking about Jacinda Ardern for a while, World Economic Forum protege, etc. Tell me what's going on there. What do you see?
As you say, I've been warning about that terrible woman for some time. New Zealand used to have, well, it still does have more sheep than people. But there was about a 1/3 reduction, I believe, in the number of sheep in New Zealand. I believe it was a divine judgment when they began building their abattoirs facing Mecca in order to export into Islamic markets. So they began building their abattoirs facing Mecca. I believe it was a divine judgment on the sheep industry in New Zealand. But now they've been hit again.
When was that?
They're losing the battle now. The first time it was Islam. Now it's Semethicon. This woman is absolutely out of her mind. But nations get the leaders they deserve.
Yeah.
If people will vote for someone like Andrews in Victoria, Australia,
Oh, man.
or if they will vote for someone
The snake guy.
like Trudeau in Canada,
Oh, man.
or a terrible woman like that, these are all Schwab slobs. They are all Schwab slobs.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. I mean, every single one of them have gone to that school, the new leaders school.
All of them. Tony Blair's another one.
Yeah.
All of them.
Have come out radically on the green agenda. Now, Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch have all received protests blocking roads. Basically, everybody's it's protesting the emissions tax.
Now let's look at this. The New Testament warns in the last days those who will be forbidding marriage
Yeah.
and forbidding certain kinds of foods.
Yeah.
They're trying to force the green agenda is trying to force a vegan vegetarian
Absolutely.
agenda.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what Scripture said is going to happen.
And it's a doctrine of demons.
Of course, it's a doctrine of demons, and it's absurd.
Yeah. Now this is Netherlands, Canada, New Zealand. I don't know if Australia's gone through that. I think David told us
There are people in Australia who'd like to do it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they're that radical yet. I don't know if Albanese has gone that far into the green agenda, but I'm sure there's people within their party, and they all want to pass this green agenda. They all want to make it happen, and under the guise of food production and protect the environment. The worst time to do it is now. Food production is so low, and we're looking at a 2023 disaster.
And they're going to drive food prices up higher by doing it.
Yeah. Oh.
It'll not just be starvation, it'll be engineered starvation.
Yeah. The Stalin, Ethiopia in the 80s.
The way Stalin used starvation against the Ukrainians,
Yeah.
or the way Mengistu used starvation in the Horn of Africa.
Yeah.
This goes back to the ancient world, to the ancient Assyrians, when they would use starvation as a military strategy against their enemies by using siege.
Wow.
You read about it in Josephus in 70 AD.
So they
the use of starvation as a military weapon, or militarization of food, weaponization of food.
Yeah.
And that's what it's coming to. Yeah. But on back of it is what Paul warned about.
I remember reading about the siege of Jerusalem, both in 586 and 70 AD. Same thing. It was the food, the water supply, food supply. Now they're doing it, but they're brazen about it. I mean, literally, they're telling you what they're doing, and yet nobody cares. Nobody seems to care at this point, because I think everybody just wants to go about their lives after the whole lockdown thing, and they're not expecting this to happen. I mean, the UN, even the UN has been warning about it.
Also what it is Eastern religion, Jainism. Jainism is a particular
like
version almost of Hinduism.
Yeah, like an aesthetic type.
That is so radical.
You can't own anything.
But you have to respect the life of a mosquito. You can't kill a mosquito or a rat.
Yeah,
that's Jainism.
Wow.
And this is what it is.
So it's New Age, Hinduism, Jainism, all implicated into, but it looks like a tech.
Yes.
With the face of a technocracy.
That's correct.
Now, another place that's really going really crazy right now is Brazil. So let's go from one part of the world, from the Pacific to, I suppose, the Atlantic, obviously South America. Brazil's election. It's a tipping point right now. Brazil went through an election. Bolsonaro seemingly lost. Lula da Silva is back in, right? But he's bringing in socialism. But the call is now that this was a fraud. This was absolutely fraud. They have proofs. They said, we'll talk about the church in Brazil because they're very outspoken about this at this point. There's a lot of evangelicals in Brazil. But after, I guess in Brazil, they have 2 rounds of elections. So they have to, the president, whoever's ahead has to win has to have 50% of the votes to go to the second round. So supposedly Bolsonaro had the 50%, but it obviously went to Lula da Silva. People are protesting. This is insane. People are absolutely on the streets. Businesses have shut down. Manufacturing have shut down. Even the large Toyota plant has shut down because they don't want socialism. They don't want da Silva in there. They believe he's going to be just as bad as he was for the first time he was president. But who was really happy about this? Narco trafficking.
Of course they are.
They were very happy.
Someone else is very happy. China. Let's understand something. This is not being adequately reported.
Correct.
The director of the CIA, just prior to the election, went down to Sao Paulo and down to Brasilia.
Now you got
People who spoke critically of the election results were being arrested based on private correspondence, held without bail based on private correspondence after Biden's CIA director went down there.
Crazy.
The people are reacting.
Yeah.
They're calling them like the January 6th protesters.
Yes, yes.
It's pure Obama or Joe Obama strategy.
Wow.
They're doing the same thing in Brazil they did. Now here's the question. Who benefits? China, obviously.
Yeah.
Is Hunter Biden on China's payroll? Is that man guilty of what many people would consider to be a de facto treason?
That's right.
Look at his business ventures in China. Look at what he's done on behalf of the party in China.
Yeah.
Is Hunter Biden a Chinese agent? I'm not saying he is.
Yeah.
I'm saying there is evidence and it warrants investigation.
Absolutely.
But a corrupt FBI will not investigate.
No, they'll investigate the pro-life.
Yes,
the
correct.
pro-life movement. They're asking the military to step in because they're trying to bring some semblance of order. I mean, this is getting out of control. Now, let's talk about socialism because this is what really is at stake.
But you know, Marco, sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
The same as Biden was elected, when the House of Representatives and the Senate
Yeah.
were not taken by the Democrats, only the White House was.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in Brazil
Yeah.
with De Silva. Most of the legislation
It's
and the
conservative.
national legislation is right center.
Yeah.
It's not left center.
No.
It's exactly Joe Obama politics.
Now,
Whose side is Biden on?
yeah, China. Or the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
You know, which is probably, well, they just labeled
Yes.
China the leaders of the World
Yes.
Economic Forum. Now, Brazil and Ecuador are the only countries in South America that are not socialist. This is by far a socialist continent. Every other nation, and De Silva, when he was there, he sent a lot of money to Bolivia, Paraguay, to build up socialism there. To build up, of course, the legacy of Chavez, the legacy of Maduro now.
Yes.
Jacob, in a sense, I lived through socialism, but you were a socialist at one point. Where does socialism go wrong? Why are so many? Okay, that's one question. Here's probably the loaded question. Why are so many Christians in favor of socialism in the States and even in South America? There's a branch of Christianity that's growing within the Socialist Party.
That came originally in South America from the liberation theology of Bernardino and Sobrino in the late 60s.
The Catholic.
It was
Catholic priest.
essentially Roman Catholic in its orientation. There are left-wing, in the Tim from New York, the bald guy, Tim Keller, access of pseudo-evangelicism. There are people,
Yeah, he's a Marxist.
in that groove, who would misinterpret the book of Acts out of context. They held all things in common.
Yes.
Forgetting that that was a temporary provision in a city that Christ told them was going to be destroyed.
Yeah, that is their call to. That is their call to.
The city was going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And you don't see that model in the Greek churches. You don't see that model in Antioch. You only see it at that time in the very beginning in a city that was under a death sentence.
Wow.
You're
right.
But they try to make a template out of it. Like anyone else, taking a text out of context, an isolation from context, and making it a pretext. And so naive evangelicals will buy into it. They think, it's justice and it's fairness and things like this. How come you have far worse injustices in socialist countries? Look, I'm not here to identify capitalism with Christianity.
Right.
I'm simply saying no socioeconomic model invented by men can have a theological basis. There are only principles. The more that something runs on biblical principles, the better it'll work.
That's right.
I'm not defending robber baron capitalism, which is practiced by Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Why are these guys pushing socialism? Well, because they know it doesn't work. When you go to Venezuela, you can make them sell the oil for whatever they want. You can destroy economies with it.
Yeah.
You can control populations and destroy economies with it. They know that for all of its faults, capitalism, and there have been abuses of capitalism.
That's right.
Capitalism has given the highest standard of living and the most personal freedom to the most people. Why did I give up socialism?
Yeah.
One simple reason: it didn't work. It's
And I've seen it at work.
when I was 14, I read the book Animal Farm.
Yeah.
And although I was a
book.
socialist, that book always had an impact on me. And that book did tell you something.
Yeah.
Like the rock band The Who, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
No doubt, no doubt. Just want to remind everyone, those who are watching on YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, Rumble, RTN, we are going to be taking questions at the end of this episode. So we're going to take questions of this episode. And then we're going to jump into backstage and we're going to go into Rumble, Vimeo, RTN, and Telegram. That's right.
Yes.
So lots to keep up. You're everywhere now. I can't even.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
We're in Israel at the moment.
Yeah.
And in the book of Proverbs, in the Hebrew scriptures, there's a term, Evet Kimloch. Evet Kimloch. It means when the slave becomes a master, he becomes more oppressive than the old master. Like Fidel.
Yeah, Fidel Castro, Maduro. And
That's right.
So, so get ready for that. So send in your questions, start sending in your questions. I think Jonah's on there, Davey's on there, Jay's on there. So send your questions and we'll put Jacob on the hot seat. So if you're on the hot seat in Israel, well, you're always on the hot seat. You just live there on the hot seat. So now, Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong. Brazil has the highest amount of evangelical Christians in South America.
In Latin America, yes.
Huge revival.
It went from about a 96% Roman Catholic population in 1970 to 72. And from 72 to the present day, that population of Roman Catholics has decreased by 30%.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the highest amount of
Yeah.
evangelical Christians. So it's not an irony. It's not ironic. It's not coincidental that the target of the socialists, of the Marxists, of the globalists, is seemingly a Christian country, not in a sense of overwhelming Christianity, but in a sense of conservatism. I mean, a lot of Brazilians are pro-life. A lot of Brazilians are pro-families. They're anti-abortion. They're anti-LGBT, even though there's seemingly a growing movement there, as everywhere in the world. But they're targeting a country to destabilize it from any kind of Judeo-Christian foundation.
Let's not forget with Sabrino and Bonino,
the
liberation theology, which was adopted in Africa by Desmond Tutu, a Protestant version of it, liberal Protestant version of the same thing. That was left, pro-left. When you had the growth of Marxism in Latin America, it was largely evangelicism that stopped it, particularly Pentecostalism.
Yes.
So hence they know they have to target it for a political reason.
100%.
Yes.
Same thing happened in Guatemala.
Guatemala was Rios Montt and all those things. Also Nicaragua.
Yeah. And in Nicaragua, they actually, I think one of your friends in the UK wrote a book about the persecution of evangelicals in Nicaragua by the Sandinistas.
Yes, Calvin.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite, there's no coincidence. I mean,
there's no coincidence.
God blesses his people.
Yes.
And then the enemy comes in and tries to destroy it. Yeah. So I guess that's their next target. So pray for Brazil. I think you were invited to go to Brazil a while ago. But
I've been invited, but my problem is Spanish is one thing, but my Portuguese, I can read it kind of because it's close to Spanish and Latin. I couldn't speak in Portuguese.
So we got to get somebody that can.
And not only that, the European Portuguese and the Brazilian Portuguese is so different to my ears. I just wouldn't.
Is that like the French Canadian and
I can handle that.
Oh, you
I can handle the French because my daughter speaks Parisian.
Yeah.
But and Latin American Spanish and Castilian is not such a problem.
Yeah.
But that's a problem.
Portuguese, forget it. Yeah. So pray for Jacob about that, and maybe we get to go. Now, another election. Now we're moving closer to home here, where we are today. Israel and the Middle East. Netanyahu's back in, albeit a far-right coalition that he's trying to bring a far-right coalition. Lapid has conceded as of Tuesday, so it's been a while now. But he's bringing with a right, I would say, as they describe it, a right extreme ultra-Orthodox. Okay. So not saying in favor of either one. I'm just saying, well, Lapid is out. The other prime minister is out. Naftali's out.
Yeah.
Now Bibi's back in. I think he's a sixth time as prime minister.
Yes.
Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And what comes with it?
Let me begin at the beginning. Some time ago, we were making parallelisms between the political trends with Donald Trump and the political trends with Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's
You're
right.
on catching up with Jacob.
That's right.
That now continues. Donald Trump is trying to make a comeback in the opinion of many people.
Yeah.
Benjamin Netanyahu is.
Yes.
Opinion of many people. So there seems to be a parallelism. Those two were akin to each other in many respects. Okay, you kind of see that. I know we're going to come to the American elections in a moment. I would take delight in the United States in the defeat of the Democrats, but I would not take delight in the ascension of the Republicans because I know what rhinos know better. You know, yes, I want to see the Democrats lose, but with people like Mitch McConnell and McCarthy, I have no faith in the mainstream Republican Party. Okay, well, Israel, it's the same thing. I like Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, generally speaking. He's under investigation on charges that he claims are trumped up, the same as the charges against Trump as being trumped. Okay, that's going on. But and there are those who will say that will be a legal distraction from us concentrating on responsibilities of office and these prime minister charges. Right, but let's understand something. Right now, the world, not all the world, but much of the world, is propagating the lie that Israel is an apartheid state. It's coming from, you know, like 22% of the university students in Israel are Arab. I remember South Africa during apartheid. Blacks couldn't go to university. 22% of the students here in Israel are Arab. You've met Arabs today. Is anybody mistreating them or making them second-class citizens?
They're business owners. They're doing very well, especially on the Sabbath, by the way.
20% of the nation's physicians are Arab. How can you possibly say it's a total lie? But having a government like this would reinforce the propaganda against Israel that it is a fascist apartheid. That is one problem. Now here's the real problem. It comes from, not from here, but from New York. I used to see him around. I didn't know him, but his people hated me. They attacked me a few times, even in New York. Maya Kahane, the Jewish Defense League. In Israel, known as Kach. They are recognized by the U.S. State Department and the Israeli government as a terrorist organization. But they have a political wing, much the same as Sinn Féin was the political wing of the IRA. Okay, you have the religious Zionist Party is the political wing of Kach. What was written in the JDL, founded by Maya Kahane. Okay.
A terrorist.
And they hate Jewish believers. They hate believing Jews. They hate believing Jews more than they hate anybody. They hate believing Jews more than they hate radical Muslims. And this will be the coalition partner with Netanyahu. Because of this unworkable system of proportional representation that has messed up Germany, that would have messed up Britain if the Liberal Democratic Party had their way, and that certainly has wreaked nothing but havoc in Israel. You cannot form a government without giving these minority parties a disproportional amount of power and leverage they wouldn't have because you need them. Now, let's understand, it's an unworkable form of democracy. Now, let's understand something. In the 1970s, under Menachem Begin, the left wing of Israel, the Labor Party, the Ma'arach, was deposed by Begin. Begin did it by making a coalition with religious parties.
That's how they started.
That's how they got power from the Labor. Now, then, however, the agreement was, give us control of education, give us control of the Interior Ministry, give us control of culture and things of that nature.
Now,
the rabbis
was not religious.
No, Begin was not.
But he had to.
He believed in God and so forth, but he was not Orthodox. But the Orthodox said we want to control the Ministry of Religious Affairs, obviously. We want to control the Ministry of Education, things like culture, things of that nature. So, but the Treasury and the military and so forth would be controlled by the Likud. Who are followers of Jabotinsky. But that's another thing. So that goes back to that. Now, however, in the new coalition, the religious Zionist party, run by Itamar Bar Devore,
Okay.
and not only him, but Bezalel Somovich, they want to control the police and they want to control the defense ministry.
Whoa.
So now you're not just talking about them wanting to control religion and culture and education. Now they are wanting the real muscle.
Wow.
That is the big change.
Wow.
And that is a danger. And the hypocrisy of it. Remember, most rabbis condemned Zionism. Most rabbis condemned Ben Gurion. Most rabbis were against the state of Israel. Even liberal Reformed rabbis only changed their position because of the Holocaust. Only because of the Holocaust did they become pro-Zionist.
So all these New York rabbis
Yeah.
were totally against
They were totally against it. But now that there's a Jewish state, despite them, they want to control it. They want to control something that they were
against.
Yes. The hypocrisy of it is unbelievable. But when you have to make a coalition, because you have proportional representation, what are you going to do? Not only that, but these parties use their muscle and leverage to prevent any kind of constitutional change that would put an end to proportional representation, because then they wouldn't be able to blackmail everybody. This is what you're dealing with.
Yeah, they're not going to vote for their destructions.
Mr. Netanyahu, to hold that coalition together, would have to sell his soul to the devil.
Wow. That's what's
And I like Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's been treated fairly by the media. But he'd have to sell his soul to the devil. And these parties, they hate Jewish believers.
Wow.
Hate. I was here when I know it was Kach, I know it was people from Kach who burned the Baptist house twice. I remember they attacked a Christian bookshop in Haifa. It was people who were Kahani's devotees.
Wow.
This all comes from Kahani, from New York, indirectly.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know the inside ballgame as well as you described it. I think they see it as, well, they're just making coalitions. But
You see, a lot of people don't realize certain things. The first chief of staff of the Israeli military was an American general. I was from American military officer from George Patton's staff, who came. He was the Tatalub. He was the chief of staff in the War for Independence.
Okay,
in the War for Independence, who broke the siege of Jerusalem. The Israelis didn't know how to fight. They did with the war refugees coming out of concentration camps. They got the first pilots of the IDF, of the Israeli Air Force.
Were Jewish Americans?
They were Jewish American pilots and British. It was, they were British and American.
Yeah.
The Chaim Herzog, the president, Isaac Yitzhak Herzog, his father was Chaim Herzog. He was a British military officer. These guys were, they fought under Montgomery against the Nazis. It was the Brits and and there were Christians who helped them, like General Wingate.
Okay.
They knew how to fight. It was diasporic Jews from America and England who knew how to fight. Golda Meir grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You know, people do not. Benjamin Netanyahu, he speaks perfect American English. He went to MIT, he speaks perfect American English.
Brilliant guy.
Lapid, the same thing, he lived in San Francisco as a kid. These guys, people don't realize most of this stuff comes to Israel from the United States. Most of it comes from the United States. And that includes the religious Zionist party. It comes from the seminal influence of Maya Kahane from Brooklyn, founder of the Jewish Defense League. It evolved from that.
And now it's a monster you can't control.
Yeah. See, people have no idea. The average Israeli has no idea. When Israel was forming with the Zionists and they were fighting the British after the Second World War, after the Holocaust, and the British were putting them in detention camps and things like this, you had the left wing, the PAMAK, but then you had Tzvi Lumi, the Stern Gang, Begin's people, they followed Jabotinsky, okay? They followed the left-wing American Jews supported what became the Labor Party, Ben-Gurion's people. Okay.
That's interesting.
Meyer Lansky, the Jewish gangster, was Bugsy Siegel and Lucky Luciano. Meyer Lansky supported Jabotinsky.
Wow.
The weapons coming in, they had a ship that was sent from New York with weapons for Begin's guys, and Ben-Gurion's guys sunk the ship.
Whoa.
Because you had Jewish American gangsters was supporting Jabotinsky's guys.
Wow.
And you had the other Jews were liberals supporting Ben-Gurion. People have no idea.
That's a complicated.
of how it happened.
Yeah.
You had a division in American Jews.
Wow.
Between the left-wing ones and the right-wing ones. And the left-wing ones saw the right-wing ones as gangsters. That's why when Lansky tried to evade or avoid prosecution in the United States on racketeering charge, he came here.
Oh.
And Golda Meir threw him out. It went to the Supreme Court here.
Really?
Yeah, and Golda Meir threw him out. And well, anyway, he appealed to Begin, because I helped the Stern Gang.
Yeah.
The Stern Gang were the real shooters of it was Itzhak Sharon and Itzhak Shamir and Begin. They blew up the King David Hotel.
Oh.
And these guys, these were Jabotinsky's guys, back by the American Mafia.
Terrorists.
For Jewish Mafia.
Oh.
So it goes way back to then. And most people do not understand this stuff.
Yeah.
They don't know about, they don't know about Meyer Lansky. They don't know about Maya Kahana. They don't know about Golda Meir. They don't know that this stuff came from the States.
Yeah.
But it's here. That's
here now.
why you see the same things happening with Begin that happened with Trump.
Well, Bibi, yeah.
This country is in certain respects a 51st state.
Yeah. Not only militarily support.
You see the popular culture. It imitates California.
Yeah.
Today we went to a hamburger joint where they had an Elvis impersonator.
Yeah, it looks like we were at a 50s diner in California. Everything it's very much like it. I mean, I know it's not the second language, but Russian will be the second language. But
no, English is the second language.
English is the second language. Oh man.
Then Russian.
Then Russian. Okay.
Russian and Arabic. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Now let's talk about the religious Jews, because hundreds of them visited the Temple Mount. Visited the Temple Mount on Election Day.
Yep.
Now, this caused a lot of things with with Arab political party. They were saying this is if they don't stop this, is going to lead to a war. And all this stuff. Now the Arabs are also, they have a party in the Knesset.
Yep.
So they're part of that representation. So the religious Jews are going up to the Temple Mount. The Arab and the coalition are saying no, 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 no. I mean, this is a very divided house. It could be a house of cards. I mean, that's what happened to Lapid and Naftali. They couldn't get anything going.
Yeah.
And they had to call an election after election. So
well, they had to make a deal with the left. And Netanyahu has to make a deal with the religious right.
Yeah. There's no winning here.
Well, if Lapid and Begin, I'm sorry, and Netanyahu, and Begin's son, Mahan Begin has a son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And if they had had the sense to come together, there may have been an alternative. But they're fighting with each other.
Yeah. Well, you often see that, right? You often see, maybe allies become enemies and so forth and so on. I mean, it's politics, right? But Netanyahu, now, him in power, is more secure against Iran, less secure against Iran?
It would be more, put it this way, if Trump had been president, North Korea would not likely be shooting rockets over Japan again, missiles over Japan again.
Yeah. Or Korea.
Korea. I mean, they would not be shooting missiles over, North Korea would not be shooting missiles over Japan. And Putin would not have invaded the Ukraine. You know what I'm saying? And Taiwan would not have been under that kind of threat if Trump had been in the White House. The enemies see weakness. Iran is desperate the way China is. It has an internal crisis. It needs an external enemy. Okay?
Yeah.
But if they see weakness,
They're
then
going for it.
now they have to deal with a strong leader. They know that Netanyahu is not going to be a weak leader.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Some of his enemies, even Netanyahu's enemies, Zaki Hanegbi, he says, well, he's going to strike Iran if Iran does anything wrong. Netanyahu has that kind of resolve. But let's talk about Iran for a minute, because they're in deep trouble. I mean, protest after protest after they killed that young lady by the Iranian guards for not wearing her hijab the right way. The protests haven't stopped. The real, the currency, real, it's below like a 30-year low. I mean, it is absolutely in the toilet
and going to get worse.
Man, and they're bringing Hezbollah and Hamas
fighters into Iran
to try to quelch them down. I mean, the media is not showing this, but students, business owners, manufacturing have all turned against the mullahs.
When Putin is going to North Korea and Iran for armaments, and when Iran is going to Lebanon and Gaza
for fighting,
desperate people do desperate things.
Yeah. I don't know how far Iran's going to go. I mean, you remember when what was that other leader that went through this and he killed a bunch of college students during Obama's era? I forget his name, from Iran. He thought he was an imam.
Ahmadinejad.
Yeah, Ahmadinejad. He did the same thing. I mean, they had he quelched it by killing them. I mean, they're doing that. There's a lot of people being killed.
Yes.
Students have been put in prison. I know Iran's biblically an important.
And Obama
gave him the deal.
Yeah, Obama's.
So is Biden going to give?
Obama sided with the mullahs in effect.
Yes.
And Biden will do the same. The only political restraint there will be now on Netanyahu will be Biden.
Wow. And that might change in a couple. This coming.
It's going to be hard for him to do it with the Republican Congress.
Now, Iran is launching new satellite-carrying rockets, going to Russia for basically nuclear programs. I mean, they think they have it in the bag with Biden. That's what they're acting like. I know it's important. Iran's important biblically. It's mentioned in Scripture.
Prince of Persia.
Prince of Persia. Do you see it coming sooner, Jacob, or delayed? Now that you have a strong leader in place and Iran has to play nice for a while, and perhaps the Dems don't have as much...
Peace comes through strength.
Right.
Peace comes through strength. So there's two possibilities. Before Benjamin Netanyahu was able to form a coalition, which may take up to a month and a half, they could do something imminently while there's still somewhat a transitional political instability in Israel. Or they're going to be in a situation where they know that they're up against a strong leader who's not going to play around with them.
Yeah.
And who's not going to be as restrained by Biden after the American elections. So they know that.
Yeah.
So it does raise the possibility that they may do something drastic in the short term.
Whoa.
But if they don't do it in the short term, it's less likely they're going to be able to do it in the near or long term, because they're not going to have the Obama, same power of Obama in Washington, and obviously they're going to have to deal with Netanyahu.
So I was talking to Davey about that today. We've been hearing rumors, and there's just rumors around, but they have some, where there's smoke, there's fire, that Iran is pushing this, whether it's a nuclear, whether it's nuclear tactical, whether it's a dirty one, seemingly fast.
Yeah.
Probably because of what you're saying. This transition is going to take some time. We need to do it. The American elections are next week. It needs to happen really quick. Now, Israel's still hitting Gaza.
Israel's still hitting Gaza,
which
and Syria.
The rocket factory that they have there, right?
Yes.
For all sponsored by Iran, by the way.
All Iranian sponsored.
Yeah. And but also in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is now going toward China and ending some of that relationship with the U.S.
And Russia.
And Russia. And China and Russia. So dollar dominance seems to be less and less in that direction. So
the only thing is the BRIC countries are in trouble themselves. That's the only thing.
The only problem
the dollar wins by default.
Yeah.
You see, it's not what is in the news, it's what isn't.
Yeah.
When you talk about the Middle East.
Yeah.
For instance, Lapid said Israel stands with the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, and we stand with the West.
Right.
But we're not going to become military participants.
Correct.
Okay? You want to bet? Right now, from Marful, the Israeli Arms Development Agency, it's an industry owned by the government that develops
Weaponry?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like the American DARPA.
Oh, DARPA. Yeah,
It's Israeli equivalent DARPA. They are in the Ukraine watching those Iranian drones, learning everything they can from those Iranian drones to improve their own
Defense.
Iron Dome system
Yeah.
against those drones.
Yeah.
No, they're not going to tell you that, but the Israeli equivalent DARPA is there doing it now, this very moment.
Right.
And although they may not sell the Iron Dome to Zelensky, there's the people who know how the Iron Dome works are still advising him
Collaborating.
on how to deal with them. It's in the Middle East. It's not what you see that's always the most important. It's what's not being said.
Now let me tell you. Let me ask you about this one. Two countries in the Five Eyes, which have been Canada, United States, England, Australia, New Zealand. Two countries have already backed out of moving the embassy into Jerusalem. So Australia did it.
Now Britain.
Now Britain does it, right? So is that a sign to Netanyahu? Don't count on Rishi Sunak. Don't count on Albanese.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. So less and less backing from the Five Eyes.
Yep.
Biden's already a done deal. That's a done deal. Trudeau never liked them.
Yep.
Israel stands alone.
Increasingly.
Yeah.
Well, they're hoping, obviously, for a return of a conservative, or Trump, or DeSantis, or somebody.
Right. Now, Blinken confirms today he wants a two-state solution or else. I'm wondering what the or else means.
Well,
this is Blinken. I don't take him seriously.
According to the United Nations, according to the League of Nations, according to the British government, according to the Jordanian government, there has been a two-state solution since 1948.
You're right. It's not what they think.
It's all hypocrisy.
Yeah. It's Jordan.
Look, it's the Menlaus complex. A left-wing Jew is a traitor to the Jewish people. And he's one of them. Garland is another.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg is another.
Oh, left-wing Jews. And they're in Congress as well. Durbin.
Yep.
Right?
He's not a Jew.
Oh, he's not a Jew. What's my thinking?
Feinstein.
Feinstein.
Yeah.
No, the other guy. Blumenthal.
Blumenthal, horrible man. But now then people will say, oh, you see all these left-wing Jews. Wait a minute. What about Mark Levin? What about Mike Simons? What about Dennis Prager? What about Ben Shapiro? What about what about the right-wing Jews who are standing up and blowing the whistle? You know, they're just bigots.
Yeah, they're just on both sides of the aisle. Yeah. Now the UN it's getting radically active against Israel again. Now there's a commission now. There's a commission inquiry on what happened with Hamas last year.
It's all Israel's fault.
Yeah. So this is again the 1975, going back to 1975, 1979, 1991, even when you mentioned Chaim Herzog, who famously tore up the inquiry that they were trying to do in 1991, to I guess to the shock of all the people in the UN that Israel actually had to do that. But now they're saying that the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry, COI for short, basically wants a report of what happened in May of 2021. So it's going to be human rights. It's going to be trials. It's going to. I mean, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere really. I mean, it's. But the only one that's really interesting was UNGA, which is the UN National General Assembly.
Yes.
They are voting, and they voted 152-5 for Israel to get rid of its nuclear weapons. Now, I don't know if that's going to go anywhere either.
No, it isn't, especially because Israel's never acknowledged having any.
Yeah. Well, Canada, Israel, Micronesia, Palau, and the United States were the only countries that voted against it. 24 abstained, including some European members, which is interesting, but 152 voted against them.
Zechariah 12, all the nations of the earth will come against Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's happening very, very fast.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately this is, So for a Christian, Jacob, and by the way, we're just winding down. So start sending your questions now. If you have the questions already, we'll take them. But as a Christian, Jacob, just to finish, before we go into questions in the backstages, what does this mean when you see Israel so prominent, and then you see nations coming against, you see their enemies emboldened, and yet you see seemingly, well, it's not seemingly, it's true, instability. One prime minister after another, here in Israel, here in England, here in Australia. What do you see? What do you tell somebody as a Christian, even a young Christian? Hey, pay attention to this. Don't look at all the distractions. But in a nutshell,
as a Christian, when you see the systemic and global political instability, Britain is exchanging prime ministers as quick as Italy used to. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Israel the same. There's one after another changes of government. When you see this kind of instability, we know what's going to happen. That a confusion and an instability and an insecurity is being satanically orchestrated in order to prepare the way for the emergence of the Antichrist.
Yeah.
He will come and bring a relative or perceived stability to an unstable global political environment and a very perilous time.
It is unstable right now.
You'll have the most perilous time in human history, and you'll have him emerge, and people will believe him, and so will many professing Christians.
It's already on the way. I mean, you have so many Christians going to socialism.
Yep.
So many Christians going into supporting the Third Temple
Yep.
already. I mean, the guys aren't even here yet, and they're supporting it. And one thing I saw, Jacob, was really interesting. Is when the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel, one after Israel first, and then Judah, one king after another was taken down.
Yep.
And then Nebuchadnezzar shows up on that day.
Yep, with the Babylonian captivity.
Yeah. Is that a sign?
Of course it is.
Okay.
Well, look, when you have an out-and-out Antichrist, somebody who puts himself in place of Christ and says, I am God Almighty, considered to be an evangelical leader. We're talking here about Stephen Furtick.
Yeah.
If that's the Christian church, if that's the supposedly evangelical Christian church, what do you expect from the world?
And none of these so-called, let's say...
There'll be many antichrists. Furtick is one of them.
Yeah.
But the one who's coming.
Yeah. Well, look at the Christian leaders, right? They say the millennial ones, the hip ones, whatever they call the skinny jean ones. None of them care about prophecy. None of them. Even, let's say, even if one of them had a superficial understanding of it, that would be an improvement.
They don't.
But they actually speak against it, like if it's a bad thing.
Yes.
Yeah. In which you see a lot of young Christians, of course, that they don't want to know because they've been told you will never know. I remember talking to a friend of mine. He says, I don't get into prophecy because there's so many views, it's confusing.
Yes.
And so he just rather not deal with it.
That's right.
The Church of England says this, this denomination says that. And so
it's the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Forget about the whole counsel of God. Yeah. We'll have this, not that.
Yeah. Excuse me, incredible. All right, so Jacob, we're going to put you on the hot seat. Let's turn this on.
Let's do it.
Okay, we're not going to ask you about the Nancy Pelosi being
Don't
sexy.
forget to turn us back off, though.
Yeah. We're not going to ask you about Pelosi being sexy and all, but and hot herself. But we're just going to put you on the hot seat. So, Jacob, I have come across a Messianic Jew named James Scott Trim, who says that Gentile believers should eat kosher. In Peter's vision, a blanket descending down from heaven, does that refer to being able to eat pig, etc.? How do you deal with that?
It was plainly unkosher food. We have some recorded teachings and also printed material on our website. The one I would point you to is the New Galatians.
Okay.
The New Galatians. I'd point you to that. We deal with this issue. Forget about people putting you under bondage to the law of Moses. Now, again, my family has always eaten kosher. For reasons of culture, for reasons of testimony to unsaved Jews, maybe personal devotion, but never anything that they would put on anybody else. When you see people putting people under the law, keep away. Yes, Peter was in the house of Simon the Tanner in Jaffa, which is about 45 minutes from where I'm seated, and he came down there, and there were bacon sandwiches, and there was shrimp, and a lobster salad, and he was told to eat it.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. In fact, I know Jay and Davey are watching, and Jordan's watching. We ought to put that video, the New Galatians, on during the week, and maybe the Spirit expressly says in the last days.
Yes,
we talked
that's
about
right.
those who forbid marriage and food. So, second question, Jacob. Can we ask Jacob what will happen when BB will be premier again? So I think we talked about that.
We talked about it.
Yeah. In a nutshell, what do we expect? More instability?
I would expect more pressure from the United States. Biden going crazy.
Oh, man.
But he could be restrained by a Republican Congress.
Okay. Question about restraint. My personal one, because I just thought about this when we talk about restraint. The Holy Spirit still the restrainer still restraining.
Yes.
How much and for how long? I mean, I know you're not talking about dates, but does it look like the restraint is it's less and less? God's allowing
Absolutely.
more and more? Okay. Go more and more. Okay. Question for Jacob. What does he think the Yanuka Rav Shlomo Yehuda Beri Shita? Wow. I don't understand the question either. Question, what do you think of Yanuka? Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda. I don't know who that is. You know who that is?
Like they're claiming to be the Messiah.
Messiah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Another guy?
with Menachem Schneerson dead.
I saw his picture today.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
all over the
And
place,
Lubavitch claiming he was Melech Mashiach, but he hasn't risen from the dead. They're looking for someone else to fill that gap. They've done it with Bobby Sala. Some people did. It was a mystical rabbi to whom they ascribed miracles. They certainly did it with Menachem Schneerson.
Yeah.
There has been a long history, going back to Simon Bar Kokhba, going back to Jacob Frank, going back to Shabbat Tzvi. There have been so many false messiahs in the history of the Jewish people after rejecting the true one. He is just the latest. And he's only coming into vogue because the star of Schneerson is fading.
There you have it. Good answer. Can you give a commentary on the coming digital currency as it relates to the end times mark of the beast?
Well, obviously, it will be a stepping stone towards it. But I'd point out that Mr. Sunak, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain, is a globalist from the camp of Schwab. And although he was Brexit, he is pro-digital currency.
Very much so. Very, very much so. By the way, so is Jerome Powell.
Sure.
In the Federal Reserve here. So I guess more coming. I mean, I know, David can tell us a little more about it. Australia it's by far a little bit further ahead because
They always try to push these things in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, but the real targets are the US and UK.
Yeah. And I think that target's getting close. It's like the vector. You're just getting
That's
closer.
right.
Yeah. Does Jacob, I guess Jacob, you got an invitation. Jacob and the Memorial team, any plans to come to Melbourne, Australia?
We'd love to as soon as the warlock is dead. When the warlock is dead, I'll be down at the South Bank Center. I'll buy you an Italian dinner on Lonsdale Street when Greek Taverina, and I'll buy you an Italian dinner down on Lygon Street when the restaurants reopen once the warlock is dead.
All right, there you have it. Okay, so put it down, mark it down on video.
I'll see you down at Mooney Ponds.
I heard they got great food there, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, before COVID they did.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have any food.
Oh, man. Greek, Italian, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'll be praying so we could all go. Any info on jail cells and sounds coming from beneath the Euphrates River? Found out when it got low water levels. Are the four horsemen different from the four angels in chains? Interesting question. Euphrates River
Okay,
going up.
the biblical association with the Euphrates is more the frogs.
Okay. What about the angels underneath that are in chains?
These are principalities,
Okay.
demonic powers that are being restrained that are going to be unleashed.
Okay.
But that happens in tandem with the Antichrist and false prophet.
Okay. And I guess the question would be, anything to do with the four horsemen? Not really.
No.
Not really. Yeah. Despite the number four being there, it's not the same.
No, you always have a satanic plan that will somehow mimic what God is saying.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Gotcha.
Counter plan, yeah.
Counter plan. Okay, so I got the question to 6 questions. I think there's another one. Oh, here we go. Do you believe that Israel will be the last democracy to fall before the Antichrist is revealed? That's an interesting question.
I do not believe democracy will be here in any country when the Antichrist emerges.
Is Israel the last one, you think?
I don't think Israel will be considered, in certain respects, Israel is not truly democratic even now
That is true, isn't it?
because of proportional representation.
Yeah, you're right. It's not even I mean, can you consider it a socialist country?
Israel was founded by socialists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were all.
It was always a mixed economy.
Okay. Very, very true. I think, James, that's the last one, right? I think that was it. That was the last one. Okay. Very nice. All right. So, Jacob, we'll let you off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll turn it off. We will wait for the signal here, but we appreciate everyone that watched on YouTube and everyone that watched on Facebook. I think we're on Instagram today. We were on Instagram. Yeah. We're going to be signing off from those platforms. The tech world is really DHS and all that stuff. They don't like us
We'd
there.
like to advise you that we have other platforms.
Yeah.
We have Rumble, we have Odyssey, we have RTN, we have MorielTV.org, and we are getting more. Vimeo as well, and
Telegram.
Roku.
We're not getting Roku. Telegram.
Telegram. Please, the less you watch the villains, you know which villains I mean, YT, please watch us on other platforms and channels.
Yeah. So as we sign off, please go to those. I think, Jay, you're providing the links for those and people can get on those to their favorite one. Yeah, so the links are there on the chat. Jump over to the other side. We'll give you some time to jump over there. And if you really want to know what Jacob thinks, I know he has a hard time getting it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't tell you all that he knows, but he holds back a little bit. Wait until you see him with his hair down. When his hair's down, it's a different show. It's called Backstage. Get to the backstage. Jacob's going to take some water right now. You get there. We'll be there in a few seconds. As soon as Jay tells us we're good, then you're really going to know what Jacob thinks. So jump over to the other side and meet us there.